Hello everyone, my name is Shona McClellan and I work for Museum and Tascalon Indie Line up in Stornoway in Lewis. Today we're here to talk about the Voices, the Hebridean Story project that Taylor has been working on. I would like to first of all apologise for not being able to be with you all today. I would have normally have loved to have come down to have a trip and be present with you all, but that's not possible at the moment. First of all, I'm just going to introduce Taylor and she can talk about the project and then I can explain a bit more about my part in the project after that. So over to you, Taylor.
Okay, hello. Yeah, I'm really sorry I couldn't be there. I would have loved to, but hopefully this gives you an idea about what we were working on over the summer for the 6-week project because I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'll just give you like a brief kind of background about why I kind of applied to the project. Let's just move the slides on. So I've always really been interested in history. Since a young age, I've loved like visiting castles and like places of rich historical significance in Scotland, and that was kind of one of the reasons I decided to study at St Andrews, which is I'm in my 4th year just now. Not studying history, sadly, but my interest had never really like went beyond just like a personal hobby, and I felt like since it was so separated from my degree that it would kind of just remain a casual interest. But then I seen the post advertised by the Robertson Trust because I'm a Robertson Trust scholar, and I knew I had to apply. And it kind of resonated with me in so many ways, because I seen that it would like allow me to develop, not only my knowledge of the heritage sector and the engagement sector, but it would also like allow me to work with people that, or within a people facing role, which is something that I realised at university that I would really enjoy. Um, and just for a little bit of like kind of insight about me, this is actually a screenshot of the PowerPoint slide that I used in my interview because that was part of the kind of interview process. You had to create this slide about why the role suited you and why you wanted to work with SCA, and so that was like a little bit about why I wanted to do it. And I guess the main driving force was probably like the excitement at being given the opportunity to listen and engage with people's like personal stories and accounts, especially of such a difficult point in history. Lockdown was not easy for most people. And living in Glasgow my whole life, I've never really had the experience of like the remote lifestyles that people in the islands did, and so it felt like such a unique opportunity to learn and listen about to traditions that are so different from like my own way of life. And yeah, so I think I was just fascinated by the differences and similarities that we might have experienced throughout lockdown. And that was kind of the main driving forces of why I thought I really want this role, and I was very grateful to get it. So to start off the project, so we knew it was 6 weeks as we went into it, and so it was like a really tight deadline, but that was also really helpful because it made sure that you were really strict with yourself and you stuck to tight deadlines, which I think is really important in research because otherwise it is very daunting if it kind of just stretches. And so to start off, I was able to go to Edinburgh, met Audrey and Robert, and I seen outside of the office where they normally worked, where I would have been working, but I was kind of mostly working from home back in Glasgow. And Audrey explained what they hoped the outcome of the project would be, and that was really helpful because it kind of narrowed the scope down a lot, and we were really clear that we wanted to focus on people's lockdown experiences in the Hebrides, which definitely helped. Again, like we said, it was such a limited amount of time, we had to keep it quite narrow. So I knew the overarching goal, and as we went forward, that was what we started with. And yeah, so this kind of left like a really wide scope of, in terms of participants, who best or how best to create the most like what do you call that, like a sample that best represented the Hebridean communities. That was one of our main like focuses, and obviously that was kind of, it was difficult in a sense because there's 50 odd islands and you can't represent every single one of them, unfortunately, because of our limited resources. But we did try our best and we tried to get a gender balance and things like that, and that was really important to us. And I think it was actually a really great first like research project for me personally because I felt really supported by the team, and Audrey had obviously her contacts and she had knowledge of the sector, and even like being able to go up to Stornoway, I'll get onto that in a little bit, but meeting Shona, both Shonas in the castle museum. And yeah, it was a really cool project. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. yeah, so the main kind of things that I focused on the first few weeks was creating the participant consent forms, recording consent forms, information sheets. So it was a lot of like legalities and like kind of paperwork, getting that out of the way because it's so important, because then that also helps you focus on what you're meant to be focusing on in a way. It keeps you grounded. So it's like a necessary evil of research, I think, but ends up being quite helpful. And we also kind of brainstormed a list of questions that we wanted to ask participants. And we did end up coming up with a list, but we kind of used that as a backup or as like more of a prompt rather than making sure that we made sure that people answered these questions in their oral histories, because we realised that we wanted it to be people's own accounts. We didn't want them to have to check these boxes. So in the end, they were useful if people kind of got stuck or kind of ran out of things that they wanted to talk about, but we didn't force them to like stick to the certain questions that we had. And then I'll just move on the next slide onto the interviewing. And I was most excited for this stage, but I was also really apprehensive. And we discovered, like quite unexpectedly, kind of last minute, and we were really grateful for the fact, but we were able to go to Stornoway on Lewis to conduct some of the interviews in person. And I'd never been to the Hebrides before, so I was very excited about that. And it all kind of happened really quick. So the day before we went, oh no, actually the day of, sorry, the day we went to Stornoway, in the morning we received training from Connor at Scotland Sounds at the National Library of Scotland in Glasgow. And he showed me how to operate this kind of intimidating like piece of equipment, a Zoom recorder that the SCA had been able to get a hold of, and that was really helpful because that was kind of how all of our interviewing was done in person, using this one device. And yeah, I learned all the technical ways to use it and how to format, which was really important, especially moving on to like when we actually sent it over to the archive, so that it was all really clear and logistically laid out, and like how to label the different tapes most effectively. And yeah, so when Audrey and I travelled to Stornoway that same day, we stayed at the Bridge Centre, we met Shona and Shona, and then we got right into interviewing the people, and we met some amazing people. We interviewed, I think it was 9 in the end on Stornoway, and people from the Isle of Lewis, and we got some really amazing participants with really cool stories. Training definitely came in handy with that. We had the concern of COVID, obviously, with keeping the ventilation open, and if some people weren't comfortable taking their masks off to interview, so that kind of interfered with the sound and stuff. So all that kind of logistical things that you can't really help, but we kind of navigated our way through. And then also there's another side to the project, which was the online interview process. So I interviewed 9 people over Zoom, and that was people from the Isles of Barra, Canna, Skye, Iona, and Eust. And it was so cool. I was sitting in my room in Glasgow, and I had scheduled maybe that day someone from Barra, and then in the afternoon someone from Canna, and it just felt so amazing that I was able to communicate with these people so well, so clearly I could see them, and I was recording this interview that was going to like live on in the archives, and it was just, yeah, it was a very cool experience. My mum got fed up with me talking about all the cool people I'd met online, and yeah, it was a really cool experience to hear, although how different their lifestyles were during lockdown. Like we all kind of experienced very similar emotions at the uncertainty of it all, and that was something I didn't really expect. I thought, even though we're both in Scotland, they had, I was in an urban area, they were in a very rural area, they had loads of space themselves. I was kind of stuck within this one area, but we all kind of had similar feelings about the whole thing. Which on a personal note I just thought was quite nice. We could relate to each other. And then finally, the last few weeks was kind of a flurry of activity. I edited the sound files that we'd collected both in person and online, and I, again, used Connor's training and like made sure they were all labelled correctly to send to the archives in the best way possible. And then I was able to kind of collect all the blurbs, and we got some pictures from the people that we'd interviewed, and Robert was able to create the website that's live right now, and he made it look so good, and it's like so clear and laid out really well. And I think that was probably my favourite part of it, was like the whole thing coming together, and now there's like a tangible piece of evidence that people can refer back to. And like on the right hand side here you've got the information resources, so that's like all the different things that I was talking about before that we created to kind of keep ourselves going, and like checking all the ethical boxes, if you like. So they're now available for anyone else who wants to do a similar project and they don't know where to start. I think that's like a really good thing to have contributed to, and like that was Audrey's idea, and I think it's really helped kind of the spirit of the whole project is like encouraging oral history, you know, regardless of your background. I had no idea what I was doing really. I just knew that I loved listening to people's stories, and this is kind of what came from it because of all the support that we received from all our different like partners. And you know, like Our Story Scotland, Dawn was so good at kind of encouraging me to like listen rather than interview, in a sense that's quite difficult. I think we're all you know, humans don't really like silence, and that's something I definitely struggled with. Like it took a lot for me to like hold back. If someone paused in an online interview, I would be like, I'd really have to force myself to let them just, you know, finish their thought. And I think I did struggle with that at the start, but hopefully got better the more I done. And I think that's a really valuable skill. It's just, you know, just to accept the silence sometimes, especially part of oral history, and just listen to people. And that's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned, I think. And then obviously gaining an insight into the heritage sector, you know, parts I'd never really thought about before, appreciating the present that we're in. I've always been a massive history geek and loved, like, you know, learning about things 400, 500 years ago, but I've become more aware of how important like protecting the present is, because, you know, things change so quickly in this day and age that it's really important to document what's going on right now. So that was a big waffle. Hopefully though it was quite interesting, and I had an amazing internship. Honestly, 6 weeks flew by. I met so many cool people. First time at the Hebrides, first research project, and I felt so supported. And it was such a collaboration between so many different people and organisations that I really, you know, I hope this is the start of something like bigger. And I know that um, there's like talks about hopefully doing something like this similar next summer, and it'll be even bigger and even better. So I look forward to seeing how that goes. And yeah, basically that's me. Thank you very much. And I'll pass back to Shona, and I think she's going to talk about her experience of actually being interviewed.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Yeah, I mean, it was great to be part of the project and to meet yourself, and to be on the other side of the recording device, which is it's usually me doing the other way around. So it was quite nice to be on the other side, as to be a participant in the project and to talk about my experience of lockdown. Um, I probably talked the most out of all your participants. I think I was the longest interview that you'd had. So yeah, that I'm quite used to just talking away. So yeah, I suppose I probably did just talk about what I went through during the year of 2020, and it's quite nice to kind of record that, I think, as well, because like a lot of people, you'd maybe think about it in years to come, but not really remember what you actually went through, unless you actually do document it. So it'd be quite nice to look back in like 5-10 years time and say, oh yeah, you know, I remember that, or you know, I did that. And having a recording of that would be quite nice to have in years to come. So yeah, it's been, and Taylor was fab. She was really good at the interviewing, kind of just asking the specific questions and then kind of letting me just go on off tangents and whatever else I was probably talking about at the time. So yeah, I think it's nice to have this sort of project, and to be covering like the participants from different areas as well. I think that's quite nice, and the fact that we'll be able to access it in the archive as well is really, really important for us, because you know, a lot of these projects, years gone by, you know, people from Edinburgh would come up to the Western Isles or elsewhere and record the people there, and it would get locked away in a vault somewhere and never see the light of day. Until now, we're starting to start getting some of those recordings digitized, which is where the work of Topper and Dolhish at the School of Social Studies is really important. So it's nice to have projects like this where you know, we do have access to the recordings and we can go and listen to them when when we want to. And having them on the website, obviously access is you're able to hear them wherever you are. So I think that's really a nice way of doing it as well, that you have that access straight away, because normally these sorts of projects you're waiting years before you actually see the end result. So to have it already up on a website and you can go on and listen to what people went through already this summer, it happened so quickly. So it's amazing, and well done to the team for getting it done so quickly in the short time that you had. But yeah, so I think it's an important part of our history that we've managed to capture, and I think the people that took part would have said that they were happy to take part and glad to have been a part of it. So yeah, I think that's pretty much sums up the project in a way, and I'm hoping that next year that there is more similar kind of stories being recorded, and that we have access to different people telling these stories.
Yeah, I think that's everything from us. And yeah, we're sorry again we couldn't be there, but we hope you've enjoyed this and it's been interesting. Fingers crossed.
Yeah,